Good afternoon, everyone. We would like to welcome you to today's webinar titled How to Assess and Improve Body Image in Your Clients with Dr. Anna Bardon-Cohn. A few things to note: participants will be muted upon entry and videos turned off. For technical assistance, we ask that you use the chat feature at the bottom of your boxes. You will also receive an email approximately 1 month from today requesting feedback and impact on today's presentation. We also ask for you to visit www.ncdus.org/training to view other training opportunities that NCED offers. Slides from today's presentation will be made available along with our evaluation immediately following today's presentation. We will also have this presentation available within 2 weeks on our training center at the ncdus.org site. I'll now go ahead and introduce today's speaker. Dr. Anna Bardon-Cohn is a professor in the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, UNC. She received her BA in Mathematics and French from Williams College and her doctorate in clinical psychology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and completed her internship training at Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic. For over 2 decades, her research has focused on eating disorders and body image with interest in psychological and sociocultural factors, with projects funded by the National Institutes of Mental Health in the U.S. She's a Bowman and Gordon Gray Distinguished Term Professor at UNC, a past Director of Clinical Psychology at UNC's Department of Psychology and Neuroscience, and a Fellow in the Academy of Eating Disorders. I'll now turn things over to Dr. Anna Bardon-Cohn.
Thank you so much, Lachelle. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all to talk a little bit about body image, ways to think about it, assess it, and improve it in our clients. So I will dive right in. So our overall goals are to describe, again, how to think about and assess body image, how to explain factors that contribute to body image concerns, and then to showcase, demonstrate some approaches to improving body image. So one big takeaway from this talk is that body image is multidimensional. And the factors that I'm going to focus on are the ones that are typically examined. The overall way maybe of thinking about a body image is it's someone's internal representation of their outward appearance, of one's outward appearance. But there are a bunch of different ways of thinking about this. And so the ones I'm going to focus are on affective. So that's basically, how do you feel about your body? Cognitive, what are you thinking about? How do you think about your body? Perceptual, this often is looked at as kind of how you perceive your body size, for example. And then behavioral, the actions that you might be taking in relation to these aspects of feeling and thinking about the body. So with affective, I'm going to focus a little bit on body dissatisfaction, body shame, probably for most of us, certainly kind of the lay folks who aren't healthcare providers. I think when they think about body image, they think of just the satisfaction piece, and that's super relevant. Body dissatisfaction is a strong predictor of eating disorders and other concerns, but it's not the whole game, not the whole story. So we'll talk about body shame there as well. Cognitive, I'm going to focus on overvaluation of weight and shape. And I decided to put body surveillance here, which is sort of, could be argued as an aspect of body image or not, but I think it's an important topic, so I wanted us to cover it. Perceptual, we'll talk a bit about some size estimation of body parts or body whole. I won't spend a lot of time on this because the other factors are have more evidence for being important to outcomes, such as distress and disordered eating and other outcomes we'll talk about. And also some of the estimation procedures just would not be necessarily so easy to set up or to do in a therapy office, for example. And then behavioral, we'll talk a little bit about body avoidance and body checking as the main kind of behavioral aspects of body image. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of these and I'm going to share some measures that have been well supported in the literature, that are good psychometrics. But I want to say a couple of things first. One is the caveat that Most eating disorder body image related measures were developed in a very specific sample. And typically they're white, female, cisgender female, and young. So that doesn't mean that if you have someone who is a different kind of demographic there, that these won't apply. They may or may not have been examined in research, and maybe we find, oh yes, this measure applies for females and males. And there really has been very little research on gender non-binary, or much less, also not much on transgender. But some of these measures absolutely can apply. Others, we don't have as much evidence yet. So I just want to go in there with that caveat. A lot of these, though, have been applied in some degree of diversity of samples. The other thing I want to mention is, like, how would you use these assessment tools, right? And so there are a variety of ways that I would suggest. So you could have folks complete these measures, score them, and compare them to normative data. So ideally normative data that fits their kind of demographics, and say, oh, hey, you're actually quite high. You're like 2 standard deviations above the mean on this kind of body image measure. Let's talk about that. Let's kind of think about targeting that in our work together. You could use it as less comparing to norms, as just a way of tracking. So you might kind of have someone complete a measure and then complete it every 2 weeks, every weekly, every month, something like that. And you can sort of gauge, oh, wow, your body dissatisfaction is going down. How does that feel? Does that feel real to you? So it can be tracking progress, and then also can just open up a conversation. So people could, you could still have them complete these measures, or you could, in a session, kind of talk about the items and see how they're responding to them. And that can open up a conversation on these different topics. So without further ado, oh, actually, one other thing. I have these like affective and cognitive, but truly some of these measures tap both affective and cognitive aspects. So don't worry too much about how strictly what category they're supposed to be in. Mainly understand that it's multidimensional. So it's good to kind of look at it from a variety of different aspects. All right, so in terms of body dissatisfaction, a lot of body dissatisfaction measures focus on weight and shape. That's not the sum of how someone might be dissatisfied with their body. Talk about that in a second. But one good measure for this comes from the Eating Disorder Examination Questionnaire, the Weight Concern and Shape Concern subscales. These are 2 different subscales, but often people combine them. I'm going to show you the items next or soon, but we do have access to scoring that's linked here, and there are some norms that you can look at if you're interested in norms. This is probably one of the measures that has some of the best norms across, for women at least, a wide range of ages. And then you can look at dissatisfaction more with specific body parts, and so we'll look at some measures that relate to that. If I don't have a link, it's because I couldn't readily find either an article or the actual measure that you all would be able to access. Like I could access it, but then when I try to link it, it doesn't work. If you do go to the link and you see an article, usually it's in the appendix, or sometimes it's in a table, the items that are relevant. All right, so I'm actually showing you the whole of the weight concern and shape concern and the whole of the next one, but afterwards I'm just going to show you some sample items. So this particular measure asks about the past 28 days, but we've seen people kind of shorten that to assess the past 14 days, something like that. And it taps into, again, shape and weight, and just generally, a sentiment of both affect related to body and cognitions related to body. Again, you'll be able to get this PowerPoint, but if you look here, these items here are just explicitly, how dissatisfied have you been with your weight, right? Or how dissatisfied have you been with your shape? Oops, sorry. It also includes aspects like the bottom 2 items to gauge how uncomfortable people feel, either them seeing their own bodies or others seeing their own bodies. And those all kind of capture, again, a wide array of kind of feelings in different contexts that someone might have about their body. The body part satisfaction scale includes these items. And a couple things to note here. One is that they include things like hair and complexion. And this is important to note in that with certain groups of individuals, this really might be as important or more important than a more sense of shape or size. And so, for example, research on Black women has found that when they talk about what factors into their body image, there are 3 factors that are identified. one is hair, one is skin tone, and the other is body size and shape. So then there are separate measures. I didn't add them in here, but there are some measures that focus on, for example, skin satisfaction, skin tone satisfaction, that might be relevant to clients you work with. The other thing I'll mention is that some of these are not changeable, like height, and then others might be changeable with, cosmetic surgery. For example, overall face, to some degree, could be, and then others might be things that people might try to change with sometimes unhealthy methods. Other thing I want to mention about this focus on body parts is, on the one hand, it could potentially seem like not a good road to go down with your clients. It sort of, breaks the whole up into parts, feels a little objectifying. And I think that's a very reasonable critique. The reason you might consider this is if, for example, you're setting the groundwork to really understand what's concerning about the body, to later on do some exposure exercises. So, for example, if someone is really feels like that their shoulders are, or their arms, let's say their arms, are they really dislike their arms, right? And for whatever reasons, too flabby, too fat, whatever. One way that you might, further down in your work together, you might talk about exposures like, hey, let's have you go out with a short sleeve shirt. Maybe start around the house with that, then go out, shopping where people won't know you, then maybe go out with friends with this. So by knowing what parts are especially concerning could be helpful down the line with something like exposure exercises. The body part satisfaction scale for men has the same idea, focuses on specific body parts, but they use more language that might be more recognizable or relevant to men. So they talk specifically about biceps and triceps and quadriceps and calves, and they add into the body parts the back, so satisfaction with the back and the neck. The other thing they do that's different is separately ask about how satisfied men are with muscularity of these body parts and with leanness of these body parts. So leanness pulls in the idea of low body fat, and muscularity is, the muscle tone, the build of the muscles. And so this is something that if you're working with men with body image concerns, this might be a more appropriate one than the body part satisfaction scale. And then there's just one other one. This doesn't just do body parts, it also goes more broad, but I chose to put it in here because it does have a lot of body parts questions. And one thing that's different in the male body attitude scale than the one we just saw is this gets at directionality. So the other one just says, how satisfied are you with it? And you would need to have a conversation to understand, is it too big? Is it too large? Is it too, what's the nature of the dissatisfaction? Here, you endorse whether you feel something should be bigger or smaller, leaner, for example. So those capture body satisfaction. I would argue kind of another level of depth in the general affective realm is body shame. And body shame you can think of as reflects shame for not fulfilling internalized cultural standards about body size and shape. So kind of not meeting up what's sort of expected in your society. And there is a scale called the Objectified Body Consciousness Scale that has two subscales we'll talk about today. And one is the body shame subscale. And these are just some sample items. When I'm not the size I think I should be, I feel ashamed. If I can't control my weight, I feel like something must be wrong with me. And it would be a shame for people to know what I really weigh. It's not all about weight. There are several items about weight, but there's some others that basically really pull in this idea of there's something wrong with me if I'm not meeting cultural expectations. All right, I'm going to switch now to talk about the cognitive aspect, even though, again, there's definitely overlap between affective and cognitive measures here. First, the EDQ, these are items that we already saw on the weight, shape, and concern, weight concern, and shape concern subscales. But the items really pull for something more than dissatisfaction. I think something different than dissatisfaction. So has your weight influenced how you think about, judge yourself as a person? Same question asked about shape. And so this really gets at this idea that's really core to the eating disorder literature of overvaluation of weight and shape. So this is, to what degree does that really influence how you feel about yourself and how you judge yourself as a person? sometimes when I've described this idea that if you get on the scale and you weigh a certain amount, you know, you're a better person than if you get on the scale and you weigh like a pound more. Now you're all of a sudden a bad person or a worse person. So it's just having too much sway on your sense of self. So these are two items that are very kind of sometimes used in combination to try to get at overvaluation. And then the eating disorder examination, which is where the eating disorder questionnaire comes from, they have a specific question that I really like that's used in this particular interview measure. And so the question is this: if you imagine the things which influence how you feel about, judge, think, evaluate yourself, such as your performance at work, being a parent, your marriage, how you get on with other people, and you put these things in order of importance, where does your weight fit in, or where does your shape fit in? And you can ask people to rank this. And so in that sense, you know, if you have someone saying, well, you know, first is my weight. And then I kind of judge myself based on how I am as a parent, and then how I do at work and such. Usually the idea is if weight or shape are kind of some of the top things that they list, the first 1, 2, or 3, that's really suggesting overvaluation of weight and shape. You can think about how there are so many different ways we can sort of think of ourselves and, you know, evaluate ourselves. And if people are saying one of the main things is based on my weight and shape, that's really tapping into this idea. You could also use a pie chart for this. So, you know, if you think about the pie, the circle being what influences how you feel about yourself and how you think of yourself and judge yourself, you can do pieces of the pie that reflect body, weight, and shape, that reflect, you know, again, work, being a parent, being you know, your kind of athletic abilities, anything like that. And I'll talk about a pie chart again later on, but these are a couple of ways to look at this cognitive aspect. I also put here body surveillance, which I said, you know, may or may not fit here, but I think it's a good thing to talk about. This also comes from the objectified body consciousness scale. And so it refers to the degree to which a person watches their body or experiences their body from an observer's perspective. It generally captures items that more reflect caring about what you look like than what your body can do. This very much aligns with objectification theory, which we'll talk about a little later. And basically, well, yeah, we'll come back to that piece a little bit later. So some sample items are, during the day, I think about how I look many times. So you're really kind of trying to think, I'm thinking about how I look. The implication there is how I look to others, right? So again, you're kind of taking this outsider perspective. The R there means reverse coding. So you would get their score and you'd reverse it to kind of capture what we're looking for. So for example, the last item says, I'm more concerned with what my body can do than how it looks. So if you score high on that, that's low body surveillance, right? Because you're really focusing more on kind of a function and not the appearance. So you would just reverse score that. So this is something else that I think is important to consider when you're thinking about people's body image experiences. Okay, this will be my short slide. I will say a little bit about each, but the perceptual aspect of body image usually refers to people's estimation of their body size, and it could be their body size as a whole, could be different parts of their body. And so some ways this has been assessed as you might give people a list, a graphic of different silhouette sizes and ask them to pick which one best fits them. Often that's done in conjunction with then choosing a silhouette that feels like their ideal body, and you look at the discrepancy. And if you're highly body dissatisfied, you know, your silhouette of how you think you look is much larger than the one you want to be, if you think you should be smaller. Other ones there, just again, very briefly, analog scales would be where you might, for example, you'll get them to sort of, like you could use calipers or something to adjust and say, well, how wide do you think your hips are? And you kind of they would set that to indicate that, or how, you know, big do you think your waist is? And so that's something that has been done to, with all these, by the way, the idea is then you look at kind of more the objective evidence. And usually folks are, especially if they have more eating disorder concerns, they're kind of off on these, right? They kind of perceive themselves to be larger than they are. Image marking would be something like where you would have people mark on a piece of paper, and you could have them do their whole outline of their body. You could have them do parts of their body. Typically, it's the whole outline of their body. And, you know, you could do something like draw it and then kind of have the body actually outlined and see the discrepancy there. The optical distortion methods is what generally is thought of as kind of maybe the best and the more ecologically valid. And here what you have is that you're going to get an image of yourself. The ideal is kind of life size, like your actual height, but it's distorted. So it's the same height as you are, but the body parts are distorted. And then there's ways of kind of, digitally kind of shrinking this, making this bigger to say, this is how I think my body looks like. And then again, that can be compared to the reality. I'm talking about these briefly because realistically, these are not always the easiest to use in a session with a client. Certainly not something like the optical distortion method, which is very cool, but not harder to do. There is some work that has been developing ideas that make this more feasible. And I'm not sure the state of the dissemination, but this could be a possible really interesting avenue. But I did want folks to know that this is a way that we can also think about body image. All right, then the behavioral aspects, I'll start with talking about body avoidance. So this refers to avoiding situations or a context that would elicit concerns about how you look, about your appearance. And I gave a bunch of examples, which actually are a lot I selected from the sample as well. So for example, kind of wearing baggy clothes, avoiding form-fitting clothes could be a form of body avoidance, avoiding physical intimacy, not looking in the mirror. So again, the R here means reverse checking. So just kind of avoiding mirrors could be an example of avoidance. Not wearing clothes that I had there saying weather appropriate. So it might be summer. Most people are wearing shorts and short sleeve shirts, but this person is wearing long pants and long sleeve shirts to kind of help hide and avoid their figure. And then there's body checking. And body checking refers to monitoring your weight, shape, or size. This could be like also looking at changing aspects of those. So could be like frequent weighing is a common form of body checking, measuring parts of the body, and it could be parts of the body that we might associate with, for example, disordered eating, like your waist or your stomach or your thighs, but it might be also like the wrist, and it could be with like your hands or could be with a measuring tape. Squeezing parts of your body could be an aspect of body checking, kind of the opposite of the avoidance, actually looking in the mirror, staying in front of it for a while, really investigating and dissecting the body. And so here are some examples from this measure. So I'll just mention a few. I check to see if my thighs spread when I'm sitting down. That's a checking behavior. It's not a checking behavior that is too positive. Not around, none of these are. But again, checking diameter of wrist, checking your reflection. And the last one is included in this body checking idea is trying to elicit comments from others about how fat I am. So kind of checking in with others to get reassurance or to get feedback is considered part of body checking. All right. Okay, so I want to now kind of shift gears a little bit. That was all a downer, right? That was all like negative ways to think about one's body and negative behaviors and negative feelings. But in relatively recent years, we've been looking at body image a little differently. So obviously, still body image concerns and negativity is really important. They're very strong predictors. But thinking about how do we think about body positivity or body neutrality? And so body positivity, you can think of as sort of both an attitude of accepting all body shapes and sizes, that that all body shapes and sizes are beautiful. It also is usually connected to countering the media images that tell us otherwise, that tell us that our bodies are flawed, and usually captures the idea of, for sure, respecting your body, but even loving your body. And so there's all body positivity movement. Body appreciation reflects part of that, which I think has been really encouraging. The critique, however, about body positivity, or a critique, is that a couple things, but the one I'm going to emphasize is that it may be too big of a leap for someone to go from years of feeling dissatisfied, maybe hating their bodies, to saying, and now I love my body. It's not flipping a switch. It's not that easy. It would be lovely if it were. So for some people, the idea of body positivity feels too unrealistic to them, too big of a leap. And so for those folks, body neutrality may feel like a better fit. And things that fit under the idea of body neutrality is it's definitely away from appearance. So you're not talking about appearance, that's not the point, but you might be focusing on the function of your body. You might be focusing on, basically focusing on kind of, if you think about your body, you think about in connection to just all these other things it does. It houses, your personality, your talents, and you really don't think about it in terms of appearance. So it's not so much you love your body, you hate your body, you're neutral about your body, and kind of focus on these other aspects of it. So I'll talk a little bit about, and I'll share information about measures on body appreciation, body functionality, and body image flexibility. And then the other thing I want to mention is internalized weight bias and stigma, and I'll talk about that in a few slides. All right, so body appreciation, conceptualized as accepting, holding favorable opinions toward and respecting the body, while also rejecting kind of media promoted ideals. And here's some examples. So, there can be, I respect my body, which I think is more attainable for people, and that can potentially have more of a body functionality aspect to it. I feel good about my body. Here we get the positive valence, right? The positivity aspect. I'm comfortable in my body, and I appreciate the different and unique characteristics of my body. So kind of owning them, elevating them as something that is good. So I think this is a really neat measure. And again, for some people, because I'll say this other thing, the opposite of negative body image, you can decrease body dissatisfaction, but not influence body appreciation. So kind of doing a good job at decreasing someone's body dissatisfaction doesn't mean they, appreciate their bodies, or they have flexible attitudes toward their bodies. So these are both things I think to be working on. And certainly one can influence the other. But I guess my point here with body appreciation is that for some people, it might be like, oh, I didn't think I could think about it this way, but you can. Again, not a great fit for everyone, but the body functionality piece, the measure, body functionality really just refers to focusing on what the body can do, not just physical capabilities, but the senses, internal processes like digesting your food, being creative, communicating with others with your body, a hug, a touch, sexual activity. And one thing that's important in thinking about functionality, it's not meant to be like an able body construct. The idea is your body can function to the extent that they can. And often the functioning is just different, right? It doesn't mean someone just can't do something, they maybe do something differently. So the measure though focuses on your appreciation of your functionality. And so here's some items. I appreciate my body for what it can do, what it's capable of doing, and some gratitude and appreciation. And then body image flexibility, the measure that's probably most often used for this is the body image acceptance and action questionnaire. There's some critiques of it, but this is currently a pretty commonly used measure for this. And this refers to the ability to use as openly experience thoughts or feelings about the body without acting on them or trying to avoid or change them. So this isn't like, and now I feel good about my body. It's more like, okay, I'm not feeling great about my body, and that's not going to influence what I do. It's not going to influence me going out with friends. It's not going to influence me choosing to wear this dress that I really like, but is sleeveless, that sort of thing. I realize a lot of my examples are from a female perspective. I'll try to make sure I'm distribute those a little more. So these are some examples here. These are all reverse coded. Okay, so for example, when I start thinking about the size and shape of my body, it's hard to do anything else. Body image flexibility would be like, no, not at all. I can start thinking about it, and they could be good thoughts or bad thoughts or neutral thoughts, and it does not have a downstream effect on what I choose to do. All right, and then internalized weight bias or stigma. This measure was developed for individuals with overweight and obesity. There's a modified version that's meant to reach a broader audience, but here internalized weight bias refers to the extent to which individuals endorse and apply negative weight-based stereotypes to themselves. And so we're probably familiar with weight bias, and this is when you kind of internalize that and kind of take it on as something you believe about yourself. And so these are some sample items. because I'm of my weight, I don't understand how anyone attractive would want to date me. So people who strongly endorse that are showing some of this internalization. Interestingly, this is very much associated with body dissatisfaction, and some research has shown that some of the pathways that happens through is body checking and body avoidance. So people with internalized weight bias, might do more body checking, might do more body avoidance, might do some of each, and that contributes to body dissatisfaction. All right, I've said a little bit about some factors of diversity, but I want to say a little bit more on this slide, and then I think we're going to switch to some consequences and factors, and then some kind of approaches to doing the therapy or your clinic or health provider office. So in terms of race and ethnicity, I think one of the main things to highlight here is that if you're thinking about body image ideals, those are culturally created. And so in the white, mainstream dominant society, for women, that's white and thin, and for males, it'd be kind of muscular and toned. And for different racial ethnic groups, they may have different norms that they kind of are comparing themselves to, and that might contribute to their body image. And so one example among Black females, besides what I mentioned before about hair and skin tone, there's research suggesting that there might be a greater sense that a curvy body would be attractive in Black communities. So it's important to know that, what are the ideals that they might be kind of considering and feeling they fall short of, right, in terms of body image concern, and then to realize, folks might be trying to meet two different standards, right? So for example, if you have a Black woman who lives in a predominantly white area, she might feel some pressure to have a more curvy body, and because of the larger environment, feel pressure to be thin. And so this could really add complexity and additional distress, kind of like a, I can't win sort of situation. So it's important to think about those factors. With gender identity, kind of talked about a little bit about this in terms of kind of using measures for satisfaction that focus on muscularity. Also important to know is that men are much less likely to seek help for body image concerns. And so even if that's not a presenting problem, it's worth kind of checking in with, because when you do have body image concerns, male or female, it's associated with negative consequences. And then also to mention transgender individuals whose body dissatisfaction would be so rooted in, especially if they haven't been able to transition, in kind of feeling I'm not in the body I should be in, right? So there are some measures that are being developed to kind of better assess that. There's some research showing that transgender individuals might especially feel heightened body shame because they're not fitting kind of cultural expectations, or body surveillance because they're trying to see, for example, am I passing, right? Kind of take the other's objective to get a sense of if their bodies are sort of being conceived of as they want them to be, as they feel they are. So there are added complexities to certainly consider in terms of gender identity. I'm going to skip to talk about age briefly. We'll talk about adolescence when we talk about social media in a couple slides. In terms of age and middle-aged women, I just want to highlight that there's been an increase, I'd say, in research in middle-aged women. This is a good thing because we know it's very common. Body dissatisfaction is quite common in middle-aged women. When they talked about 73% of middle-aged women being dissatisfied with their weight, 40% of women over 50 checking their body shape and size daily, doing frequent weighing. So this is not a case where you grow out of body dissatisfaction. And when working with clients who are middle-aged, I'll focus on middle-aged females here, you definitely want to think about what might be unique to their stage of life. And so, for example, often there are aging-related concerns regarding appearance. With age, there might be, kind of thinning of hair, graying of hair, skin being less elastic, weight being distributed differently. And all of this is kind of moving them away from the societal ideal for female in the mainstream US. So being aware of kind of factors that might be more salient for them because they're related to normal aging, and then also factors that might be related to menopause in terms of some body changes that occur there. I'm not going to say all these, but these are some consequences of negative body image. There's a couple of things I'll say. One is that body dissatisfaction is one of the most consistent and robust predictors of eating disorder. So that's definitely something to be aware of, but it can contribute to all sorts of other concerns and problems. About the unhealthy behaviors often aimed at altering appearance, that's, I think, kind of the linchpin here, because if you're dissatisfied with your body, or you think, I guess maybe it's an and, you're dissatisfied with your body and you think, I really judge who I am based on my body, kind of the logical thing to do is try to do something to change your body, right? As opposed to being more accepting, it's what my genetics gave me, I eat healthfully enough and I exercise, moderately. This is kind of what my body's going to look like. If your body is satisfied, often that will motivate trying to change. And so dieting could be something to change, purging, compulsive exercise, steroid use. The binge eating I put there, that might sound like, wait, how would that alter your appearance? So I put that there for two reasons. One is men in particular who they might talk about cheat meals or kind of alternating between being very restrictive and then kind of binge eating to add weight, but then the restriction to kind of reduce body fat. So binge eating actually could be a piece of men's attempting to kind of gain mass. Binge eating might also be used as an escape for anyone who has body dissatisfaction experiences, like kind of way of sort of escaping from where they currently are, because it can provide a zoning out experience. But I included it here particularly because of men and bulking up. All right, I want to make sure I have ample time for the other items, so I think I'm going to just highlight a few things here. So these are some risk factors and protective factors. The protective factors, some we already talked about: body appreciation, functionality, flexibility. Self-compassion is one that has really been gaining steam. Self-compassion has three different kind of aspects to it, but one aspect is self-kindness, and sort of the idea of treating yourself the way you would treat a dear friend. Being, having negative body image, you might be thinking like, oh, I'm so fat, or I'm too big, and like, you would never say that to a friend that you loved, right? So don't say it to yourself. So that's the idea of self-compassion. Media literacy would be kind of being able to critique the media, really understand that there's intentional messaging going on. There's messaging to try to make you feel badly about your body. So then you decide, oh, I can buy this diet food, or I can invest in this sort of equipment that will tone me. Being skeptical of what the media is telling you. In feminism, I'll come back to talk about that in a little bit. These other factors, the risk factors, so social comparison, it's like, sadly, I guess, super normative to be comparing yourself to others. And the idea is it's sort of getting a sense of maybe where you stand, but it is consistently associated with negative body image concerns. And often these are done with maybe your peers. We'll talk about it on social media in a bit, but we also have been looking at self-oriented comparisons. So you're looking at how you were sometime in the past. Grad student who worked with me, Katie Thompson, has looked at this in postpartum women. So women who are comparing themselves postpartum to their pre-pregnancy's weight, that's not a good thing. That's associated with negative outcomes. And we might also find that for example, middle-aged women comparing themselves to younger selves. Appearance ideal internalization is kind of buying into whatever is deemed culturally most attractive. So buying into thinness, that's important. It's something I should strive for. Negative body talk or fat talk. This is self-deprecating talk that you would do often with others or with others kind of present about your body. So this would be saying, oh, look at how big my thighs are, or I really should not eat that dessert because I need to lose weight. This is also consistently associated with negative feelings about your body. And then body-related teasing, parental direct and indirect comments. The direct comments would be if a parent were to say to their child, you need to lose weight, or are you sure you're going to have that extra serving? And then indirect are things that they say to themselves, which could be considered fat talk. This would be where they aren't like trying to engage in a conversation. Usually with fat talk, there is like a conversation going on where people are being self-deprecating. This would be, they just overhear their parents saying, I need to lose weight, or I'm too fat. All bad, related to negative body image, something that could be important to target in work you do with clients. All right. Let me see. I think I'm going to, these are important theories. I have an image of the other one, but just know that there are theories that kind of posit the importance of, that say things about body image. The objectification theory in brief talks about how the culture tends to sexualize and objectify women's bodies, and that leads women to kind of adopt this outsider perspective and to put a lot of time and energy into what they look like. And sadly, you know, the idea of kind of women's body image is especially important to how people view her has been borne out time and time again. A Pew Research Center study reporting 2017, when they asked, what trait does US society value most in women? The top response was physical attractiveness. For men, the top responses were morality, financial success, and ambition. So, you know, that's still a sense of that image, physical appearance is central to kind of worth. The tripartite influence model posits there are these different kind of influences, family, peers, media, and the influence they have on people's body satisfaction is by increasing levels of comparison and internalization. So if, for example, you feel pressures from your family or peers in the media, or see those models of kind of what's attractive, you're more likely to start comparing yourself. So do I match up? Do I meet up to these kind of expectations of thinness or muscularity or curviness? And then the internalization, again, is having those pressures make you feel like, yeah, I should be thin. I should be muscular. I should be curvy. And so that's associated with body dissatisfaction, which can result in disordered eating. Let's see. This is a study that was really interesting. The focus on adolescent girls, but it focused on social media, and in some ways, some of the media things are absolutely still relevant to everyone. The adolescence parts are more relevant to adolescents and some to girls. The key point that I want to highlight here is that social media, though it has good aspects, certainly as well, has very concerning aspects related to body image, especially due to its very visual nature, especially if you're thinking about like Instagram and TikTok. It's available 24/7. So you could compare yourself, like you can stay up all night and compare yourself with, you know, edited images, celebrity images if you want. And then it's quantifiable in the sense that you can see what gets likes, what seems like, oh, okay, that is especially what's appealing and attractive. So that can influence a lot of people, right, who are on social media. Some people more vulnerable than others. And this paper argued that one group that's more vulnerable is adolescent girls. And because in adolescence, you know, you're developing your identity, you have heightened self-consciousness, you're changing your body with puberty. And so you're really looking at models for what I should look like, what I should be. And their point is that social media can increase body image concerns via a focus on others' appearance. There are just so many idealized images out there, right? Peers influence celebrities, and then a focus on their own appearance. It heightens their awareness of how they appear on social media. By editing self-images, you're literally changing what you look like, suggesting that what you actually look like isn't good enough. So there are these ways that social media can be problematic. And so for working with folks, especially adolescents and adolescent girls, I think these are important questions to ask, but I think they're worth asking in general. All right, this last part is going to be focused on body image intervention techniques. I have on the references, I had this Aliva et al. Paper. It's really great. It looked at standalone body image interventions, but what it focused on and what it found most support for is certain techniques. And I thought this was especially useful talking to a generalist audience, because you may not kind of use a whole, you know, multi-week session on this one particular intervention, but here's some techniques you can use that can be helpful in working with your clients. So these all had large effects in improving body image, and I'm just going to focus on some of them. These really come from a cognitive behavioral background. Oh, and by the way, if you look at the Leave It article, it expands on all of these. But discussing the roles of cognitions and their role in body image, here you would talk about, you know, to what degree do they have dichotomous thinking, like I'm attractive or I'm not? To what degree do they have irrational beliefs? You know, I'll only be successful if I get to this weight or if I build up this musculature. You would do self-monitoring and restructuring of cognition. Self-monitoring, this is kind of classic CBT, right? So you can have them look at what's the event that activated their thoughts and feelings. What are the beliefs? What are the emotional consequences of having those beliefs? You can work with them on changing negative body image. That was also something very helpful. So, having them catch themselves when they're being, self-critical with certain terms, right? So instead of someone saying, "Oh, my stomach is disgusting," can you say, "Well, my stomach is soft, my stomach is round." Don't make the leap to say it's disgusting, and like kind of remove that from the vocabulary and be more descriptive if you're going to focus on your body at all, which is another question. Then these last things, you can do imagery exercises, exposure exercises, size estimation exercises. I'll say something about the exposure exercises. So again, this is where you can get a sense of what is concerning, what is fearful to the individual. And then you might want to set up a hierarchy of ways that they can kind of be exposed to these things, situations that make them feel uncomfortable with their bodies. The goal is they learn to survive them. They probably won't feel as uncomfortable as they thought. And even if they do feel uncomfortable, they get past through it, right? And probably like the worst thing that they imagine can happen, doesn't happen. And so this could be, for example, going out wearing kind of more form-fitting clothes. It could be for someone who has, feels like their arms are too small and not muscular enough to go out wearing a tank top. So those would be examples of exposure exercises. The bottom two, relapse prevention strategies and stress management, are in a way broader, but the relapse prevention strategies, I like this one because they talk about how, okay, you've done this work, you've developed these skills, you're going to be in situations where this is all reactivated, right? Where all of a sudden you're kind of starting to feel really kind of just these negative body image concerns, coming back. And so how can you handle those differently? In some cases, maybe it's avoidance of some situations. However, more often it's like, how do you just kind of able to sit with them and not let them kind of not have you spiral down into negative feelings about your body. There also are psychoeducation aspects that were found to be really helpful. And this was the concept of, for discussing the concept of body image. What are the causes of negative body image, the consequences, the behavioral expressions, that's like body checking and body avoidance. And one thing I thought was interesting about concept of body image, in research that looked at layperson sense of body image, a lot of them said, well, it's about weight, or it's just relevant to women. And so I think it is important to kind of discuss this concept, discuss its multidimensionality, find out what's more relevant to the person you're working with, and make sure you're on the same page when you're talking about body image. All right, I'm not going to talk about this because I'm running time. I'm happy to answer questions at the Q&A, but these are some sort of interventions that dissonance space has been around for a while. More recent has been acceptance and commitment theory and self-compassion. And I will talk about this. This I want to give credit to two colleagues, Dr. Meg Harney and Dr. Mary Hill. They're both clinical psychologists, and I reached out to them besides doing my, reading and pulling from the information I know to get a sense. They're both clinicians, fantastic clinicians, about kind of how they work with body image. So this is kind of an amalgam of some of the things they shared. One thing I think useful is this is not a one-time session, right? People build up their body dissatisfaction over years. You're not going to then, like, in a session and you're good, So you probably usually weave it into core work. And to the degree that someone's being very self-critical about themselves, part of that self-criticism might be about their bodies. And so you can target that. I love this point about really being empathic and aligned. And this is a quote from one of these clinicians, kind of communicating that, that voice that tells you how ugly you are, how fat you are, how, unmuscular you are, must be really hard to live with. I'm sorry that you've experienced it for so long. You're also really encouraged to avoid the trap of kind of being unintentionally dismissive. And this is something, healthcare providers might do, spouses often do. They think it's the right thing to do to say, no, what are you talking about? You look good. You shouldn't worry about your body. It's a real worry that they're experiencing. And so you don't want to be dismissive about that. The values work, this really pulls from ACT. you want to kind of draw out what they value in life. And a good way of doing this is using pie charts. And so what you might do is you have a first pie chart that says, where do you put your time, your energy, your emotion, your commitments, and get them to create this pie chart. And often, like, something about the body related, or maybe body and food related, takes up a big chunk. Like, I spend a lot of time thinking about my body, worrying about my body, exercising to lose weight, whatever it is. And then the other piece of the pie might be, I spend time with my, focusing on my family, focusing on my work, focusing on creative activities. I'm an artist, etc. And then you have a pie chart that says, given what you value, given what's really important to you, what kind of makes meaning in your life and is rewarding and feels fulfilling, where do you want to put your time and your energy and your emotion and your commitments? And usually what you see there is that body slice is just so much smaller and other things are bigger. And this can be really useful sort of as a motivational interviewing technique, or kind of having this discrepancy can really provide an additional oomph or motivation to say, like, yeah, I want this second pie chart. I don't want the first one. And then that can lead the way to people being, exposures, being especially more ready for exposures, could help them buy into working on doing less body checking. The other things, these also come from these clinicians. Let me see what I'm gonna, I guess I'll highlight just a couple of things here. Discussing feminism, for some women, this is really a great way to go. So you can kind of assess that, to talk about how the way you've grown up and understood that the body is so important is really kind of meaning it's associated with a kind of a situation where there kind of is a patriarchy and a dominance there, and that puts women at a great disadvantage. So it can be a really kind of rallying cry for some women. Attend to possible weight bias as a healthcare provider. Healthcare providers are known to have weight bias. We all have some weight bias, but being mindful of that and making sure that that's not something that is influencing kind of your interactions. Physical activity. There are mixed findings on how that might help with body image, and I think you have to be especially careful with that if someone has used physical activity to lose a lot of weight. But in some cases, it can be a very nice way of reconnecting with the body and improving body image, things like yoga and walking. Writing exercises. One of the articles that I put in the references is a review of body functionality, and it has a cool writing exercise that has been found to be in meta-analysis most effective in terms of promoting positive or more positive body image. So I encourage you to take a look at that, and then considering social media use. Okay, and so then I'm just going to go through these and say these are ones that I haven't used. Other techniques I've used when I work with clients, these are ones I've used in the classroom to start a conversation going. And so I invite you to consider, are these ways that you could start a conversation going if, either in addition or if other things aren't working, these might feel a little more comfortable. So in this one, we just ask people, what did your body look like at different time periods, early childhood? How did you think about your body? How satisfied were you? And then kind of look maybe in adolescence and then now. And part of this is to hopefully, most people when they're in early childhood didn't think about their bodies, and if they thought about them, they thought about it functionally. I ran fast, right? So for some people, this can be helpful. Another thing is kind of tracking fact talk. So I've done this in a classroom where I just explain what it is, and they kind of go out for several days and listen and record it. And it can be stunning for people to say, like, wow, yeah, it's all around me. And, it doesn't make me feel good. And so that can be something that sort of is eye-opening. And then lastly, I have some video activities or video clips that could be useful. Feel free to take a look at them. They could be, again, good conversation starters for you and the folks you work with. And so these are some references, including one on body image flexibility and one on body functionality that kind of provide a review. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Dr. Bardon-Cohn. I'll now open up for question and answers. Please type your questions in the Q&A box. We have a few minutes to address those questions. Any unanswered questions will be sent to you via email with those responses from Dr. Anna Bardon-Cohn within 1 week from today. As a reminder, slides and the evaluation will be available immediately after the presentation. The first question reads, how can a dietitian use aspects, these tools/assessments within their scope of practice?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess a couple thoughts here. On the one hand, if you're working within a larger team, you may have less of find you have less of a role with the body image piece. If you are like not as part of a team, then I think some more of these things will be more immediately applicable. But regardless, I think the connection to which, I guess you can certainly do some CBT stuff in terms of thinking about if there's, for example, resistance to try certain foods or to kind of expand their repertoire or amounts, kind of talking through kind of what their thoughts are about that, what kind of feelings that elicits. A thought might be, I'm going to gain weight or I'm going to look unattractive. And so there we can talk about, that could be an entree to, either kind of doing a more CBT model, which is challenging, for example, the fact that you have to be thin to be attractive, or it could be an entree to sort of kind of a values piece. So I think actually, to say one more thing about that, I think with a dietitian, then you could use something like values. And so if you kind of you can talk about it the way I talked about it, or you can talk about it in terms of like, what do you see kind of food doing for you? And, now in an ideal world, if the ideal world, if they can say, well, I'd like fuel to really like, kind of nurture me, make me strong, make me alert. My being comfortable with it, let me kind of go out and socialize with my friends. Those are nice ideals to move towards versus maybe where they're now, which I want food to, not let me gain weight or that sort of thing. So long answer, and hopefully somewhat helpful, but I think the values piece could be helpful, or depending on how they're thinking about food, you could kind of take some more of that CBT approach. What are they thinking? How does that make them feel? And kind of challenge that a little bit.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bardon-Cohn. The next question reads, on most websites I visit, nearly every ad is about reducing belly fat, even though I've worked to adjust ad preference where possible. What other places can we help our clients learn to take control of the images they are bombarded with daily? How can we help improve our patients' critical thinking about the images and messages they see daily related to body image and dieting?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Preach on. I think I know those ads that you're talking about, but so a couple thoughts on that. I mean, some things are right out of our control. There are to the degree, well, they're algorithms, but even if we're kind of not looking at those things, I think there are different things that will kind of present these images that talk about reducing belly fat or whatever to us. So a couple thoughts. One is, you could encourage people well, first of all, to realize that's happening, kind of realize how messed up that is, right? And I mean, use that term, like, this is messed up, that this is what I'm kind of bombarded with and I don't have control. I don't want to see these images. This is what's being shown to me. That's just messed up. But think about taking some social media breaks. I have 2 sons, and my 19-year-old has talked about, and he's into kind of, he lifts weights and whatever, but he said the amount of messages he has about supplements, about muscle building is just insane. And so he takes occasional social media breaks. He's like, I just need a break. So I think kind of encouraging that as a possibility. I say social media, but you might also, if possible, kind of take a little bit of an internet break periodically. In terms of helping them critically think, I think that for some people, I think once you start the conversation, they're pretty open to it. And it's sort of refreshing to be like, yeah, this is like not healthy messaging, if this person you're working with is a parent, that can be a nice hook. How would you talk to your child, right, about kind of these messages? And how would you help them understand that they're sending unrealistic messages that are so focused on appearance when we should be focused on so much else about ourselves? So for someone who's a parent, I think that can also be a nice hook. Like, how would you help your child kind of really be skeptical about what you're seeing?
Thank you so much, Dr. Bardon-Cohn. We have time to take one more question. Any unanswered questions as I as I stated before, will be sent to you via email 1 week from today with those responses. Some clients perceive that focusing on body functioning or appreciation does not fix their dissatisfaction with their physical appearance. What interventions might help with this?
Yeah, question. So there are cases, so it doesn't mean automatically one goes up, the other goes down. There's a relationship, but it might not happen for everyone. So if folks are, appreciating their functionality and, respecting their body, but still feel negatively about their body, that might be a place where you shift to more of a, well, actually, let me think about this. Okay, Zach, where you shift a little bit more towards the values focus and realizing that, if I'm still not feeling great about my body, I'd rather not be there, but that's where I am now, kind of a mindfulness about it, right? That's where I am now. And I'm not going to have that win over versus the gains I've made in terms of respecting my body and appreciating the functionality, and kind of being able to just sort of sit with it, which is still distressing and probably doesn't feel kind of fair to the person. But it could be that the more they practice that kind of negative body dissatisfaction talk may decrease over time if they're able to still kind of maintain a focus on functionality and, a sense of appreciation or, flexibility or neutrality about the body. So I guess the point there is I don't have a magic answer for that. I wish I did. But I think if they're making strides in the other areas, and if with the body dissatisfaction, they find that's not leading them to unhealthy behaviors, I hope they can consider that a win. And that over time, that might get better if they're able to again keep up those more healthy attitudes toward the body.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bardone.
And I don't know, Michelle, if you're still talking, but I can't hear.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Dr.
Okay.
Bardone-Cohen. I wanted to give you a minute to share anything with the attendees, if you'd like to share anything with them before they log on.
Gosh. Okay. Well, just you're doing good work. It's one thing. I'm glad you are attending this webinar and others just to kind of get more ideas, hopefully find some support for things that you're trying. And I think, with the body dissatisfaction piece, because it really is, again, so linked to eating disorders and other concerns, I encourage you to keep that up. I really encourage to look at the ideas of body positivity or neutrality or functionality, and just kind of being flexible to see kind of what your clients are gravitating to and kind of going in with that. But yes, no, thank you. Keep up doing the good work.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming to today's webinar. We appreciate your time, and we hope to see you next month at the next webinar. Thank you so much, Dr. Bardone-Cohen, once again for such a wonderful presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye.